This interview is for information only and should not be considered as investment advice or a recommendation to buy shares in the company featured. Welcome to this Stock Box interview. Joining us today is Ben Turney, the CEO of Kavango Resources. It's good to be talking to you again. Ben, you're looking well. How are things?
Yeah, I'm good, thanks, Mark. You know, a bit of a rough month in February, but overall life goes on. Just got back from Africa last week, and I'm heading out there again next week. So it's all go at the moment, and obviously we've released quite exciting news today. So all in all, quite good.
Indeed, you've had the news today. You've also had your strategy update that was announced earlier in the week, which covers off a number of aspects, but a key point being the outline the swiftest plan to delivering a maiden economic resource. And you say today's update describes how we intend to achieve this. I wonder if you could perhaps just lay out the milestones and targets for Kavango's exploration programs. Let's start with the KSH, shall we? And I think you've got some slides you want to take us through.
I do. So, usual disclaimer, we have to leave that up for a moment. So really, our strategy document was deliberately high level, Mark. So we kept it to outline a very simple, easy to understand plan. This is the direction of travel that we're now taking the business in through to the end of 2024. Over the last year, we've obviously completed our proof of concept drill campaigns across all of our projects. And the market, frankly, hasn't liked the results that they've seen so far. I don't think the market's understood the results. We've done our best to communicate the progress that we've made, but unfortunately, we've had a lot of dreaded technical success rather than economic. But the point is, with projects like ours, we are dealing with a lot of complexity, not least the presence of these Kalahari sands, which are pretty much over most of our project areas. We're actually dealing with very, very little at-surface geology. So in terms of actually chasing geological vectors into our targets, there isn't much for us to go on. So as everyone knows, we're pursuing largely a geophysics-led exploration strategy. That means we have to drill more holes than other companies might have to, who are pursuing a different strategy to ours. But we did make a lot of progress last year. So in the KSZ, our strategy is really quite simple. We're going to drill the B conductors. We identified B1 back in summer 2021. We had an attempt at drilling that, which completed in February last year. Unfortunately, our original surface model, what we'd actually picked up were two conductive bodies, and we'd interpreted those as a large-scale single body. Now, that's significant because I'll come back to that in a moment when we talk about B3 and B4, the other two targets that we developed last year. But in terms of B1, we believe we missed this thing by a matter of meters now. So we've been back to the drawing board over the last 6 months. We've obviously gathered a lot of data. We've got a lot of surface TDEM data, the original TDEM data, subsequent follow-up loops that we ran last year, and of course the downhole surveys that we ran from the successfully drilled hole. Now, all of that data together, what we've been doing is our guys have been working through this, remodeling it. And there's an expert who we refer to. We're not releasing his name into the public. We're keeping that private to ourselves. But this is a guy who is a real leader in his field. It's someone that Jeremy brought into the business a year and a half ago through some contacts of his. And what we've now identified is from the downhole data that the B1 conductor itself is giving off a conductance reading of 28,700 Siemens. This is an off-the-charts reading, and we're confident that that body is there, whatever it is. It's exceptionally conductive. There aren't many things in Mother Nature that can be that conductive, that occur naturally. So the chances are, we know that there is some form of sulfides down there, some form of massive sulfides, more than likely. It's our belief that this is all indicative of our nickel copper sulfide model that we've obviously been pursuing since the very beginning. And that view is further strengthened by the two conductors that you can see on your screen, slightly further to the north, which we've labelled B3 and B4. Now, what you can see on this image here, we put this out on social media earlier, and we will be providing more information on this in the near future. But if you look at the two plate models towards the bottom of the diagram on the B1 conductor, you can see the two red triangle boxes. Those are much smaller. Those are two interpretations that we're using of the potential, the geophysical body that we've identified, but they're much, much more compact than the two larger rectangles that you can see over B3 and B4. What that basically means is that for B3 and B4, we're in the same position with those two conductors that we were in for B1, originally back in July 2021 when we first identified this as a drill target. So we've got a bit more work that we need to do on B3 and B4. But the reason we're not rushing out to go and drill B1 immediately is because when we do mobilize the drill rig to the field for these targets, we're planning to drill all three targets. We really are going to go for it this time. This is now proper discovery drilling. We've got three excellent looking targets. B1 obviously ranks the highest by an order of magnitude, but the other two both do rank within the potential for massive sulfides as well. And what we're very positive about in the actual, from a regional setting perspective, is if you look at the map on the right-hand side, you can see the great red spot, which is where the B conductors are both, or all three of them lie. And the great red spot itself is at the junction of a number of regional faults that pass through this area. Now, faults are very important because those provide the breakages in the Earth's crust for magma to have passed up through the surface, hopefully encountering some form of sulfur. We've encountered a lot of coal beds in the drilling that we've conducted in the KSZ, so we believe we have the active source for sulfur segregation in the coal itself. So as the magma's passed the surface, as the faults have come apart, these tend to be the most prospective regions for the type of nickel-copper deposits that we're looking for. So we believe we're looking in the right area. We've got very large-scale prospects, and the targets themselves also are forming within a cluster. So if the Norilsk model is to hold water, that's also something we would have expected to see. If you look at the Norilsk styles of mineralization, you have these pods, these clusters of nickel deposits that are all tightly packed within quite a close area to one another. So all the circumstantial evidence for us is looking very encouraging at this stage. We now need to go and drill and find out what the causative bodies of these geophysical anomalies are.
Okay. Can you provide any more information about the B Conductor Clusters that you talk about and the significance to the KSZ North project? And how confident are you that drilling the B Conductors could validate the entire exploration program?
Well, in terms of how confident we are if it could validate the program, we're extremely confident, because obviously if we hit nickel copper sulfides, then that's it. We have proven the model definitively. In terms of sort of what our expectations are for the drill campaign, well, look, Mark, we've got one A ranked target, and at the moment, what are two B ranked targets? Those could well get upgraded with further work that we're planning to do. But the three of them all occurring within a cluster, within a very close area to one another, within the Great Red Spot, which is what I've just said we believe is the right geological setting for this style of mineralization. These are targets that we have to drill. So it's always been our intention to come back and drill these. But it's also technically challenging as well. Drilling in this region is not easy. We're dealing with fairly deep targets at around about 500 to 600 meters depth. So there are challenges ahead of us. But in terms of the overall confidence in these, the B1 in particular, it's an A-ranked target, Mark. It really is.
Well, you mentioned there about the challenges. I wonder if I can ask you a bit more on what those associated challenges or risks are that the company might face during drilling, and really how the company is prepared to address the challenges and mitigate the risks for investors.
Well, we learned a hell of a lot in the last drill campaign that we ran that finished in February last year. When we attempted to drill the B1 conductor the first time, we ran into some pretty serious problems with the hole, because we ran into vertically fractured ground. Now, if you imagine sort of fractures that occur vertically and you're trying to drill into those can cause you a lot of problems in terms of maintaining the integrity of your hole. We also encountered quite a lot of expanding muds as well. We encountered those 3 times in different holes that we drilled in the KSZ in the last program. Now, the problem with expanding muds is that when you pull the drill rods out, when you're going through, let's say, a shift change, the muds can actually start to close in, and as you try to put the drill rods back down the hole, those muds can actually basically lock tight the actual drill bed, and that was another problem that we encountered as well. So we have encountered a lot of these operational issues. We know that in the history of the KSZ, there has been quite a lot of failure. So a lot of companies who've tried to drill there, we're the only company that has hit all 4 of our targets with 100% success rate. So this really isn't sort of an area for the faint of heart. but with our drilling partners in Equity Drilling and Mindea, we've got the right guys on the job. I mean, they really did give us their all in all the campaigns that they've run for us. The recent KCB program was a bit more problematic, but certainly at Ditau and at the KSZ, it worked really, really well. So, we believe we've got the right guys to work for us. We've got the right team in place, and our team as well has also learned a lot. And because we've drilled here before, we also have an idea of what the stratigraphy is. So we've got a very clear idea of where those difficult zones are, and we can therefore plan accordingly. On the previous holes that we drilled, we were obviously flying blind. So everything new that we hit was a surprise. This time, hopefully, we shouldn't have anywhere near the same number of surprises.
Okay, good. Well, thank you for that. Let's talk now about the KCB then, and what the plans are there and the latest update.
So we jumped the gun a little bit on the KCB. We put out our Karakubis announcement a couple of weeks ago before we put the strategy announcement out. And in the Karakubis announcement, it's a very long announcement, but it contains a lot of detail about the steps that we've taken in the Copper Belt and why we're focusing our attention now on these 4 licenses that are over by the Namibian border. As part of our strategy that we outlined earlier this week, a key part of that now is that we're bringing in expert exploration geologists in their fields, experienced in the specific deposit model types that we're pursuing. So in the Kalahari Copper Belt, we've been working with Dave Catterall since about October last year. Dave is one of the leading authorities in the KCB. I wish we'd been introduced to him much sooner. I think he could have helped us out a huge amount. So where we've been learning as we've gone along, Dave has accelerated our knowledge and our understanding of the belt way beyond where we were. It was too late to have an impact on that last drill campaign on 082. We were already committed to that, and we were pursuing the CSAMT test. But thanks to Dave's guidance and advice, he's now strongly recommended that we focus our energy on the 4 licenses by the Namibian border. So that's what we're now doing. What's particularly interesting for us is immediately to our east is a company called ENRG Elements. They're based in Australia, so they're an ASX-listed exploration company, and they've put out some really interesting AEM results and some other exploration that they've done, which suggests that the rock formations that they're looking at, so the regional structure, goes from their ground well into our ground. So about sort of across the first 2 licenses that it encounters and about halfway into the other 2 as well. So that gives us a very, very clear targeting vector to work with. We've got our teams in the field and now doing some extra work under Dave's supervision. We've also got Kaz Lotter and Spectral Geophysics who are going to be doing more in these projects moving forward. We haven't actually used Kaz so much in the KCB to date. We focus mainly on the KSZ working with Kaz. I've got to look back and sort of think about why we did that, because to be honest, with Kaz's experience in the belt, I mean, he's been active there now for 20 years as well. I think we should have had Kaz had more of his input from the beginning. But again, now that we've got Kaz and Dave on board, together with the work that Hilary and Jeremy in particular are doing on the CSAMT, I think we've got a winning team. We've got some highly prospective ground, and we're putting together now a budget for a quite extensive exploration program that's going to culminate in some major drilling later this year.
Okay, excellent. We'll come on to that in a bit more detail in a moment, but then let's just get an update on Ditau then as well. What's the latest going on there?
So over at Ditau, we're pursuing currently the precious metals lead. We encountered in hole 004 last year this zone of interest. So the 100 metres from 293 metres down to 393. We hit these beautiful looking red rocks that we've been circulating to people, and our team didn't know what they were. And to be honest, not many people seem to know what these rocks are. It's quite a rare formation, but extremely interesting. You can clearly see there's a huge amount that's been going on from a geological perspective. So you've got a lot of fractures, brecciation. You can see a lot of veining. But the presence of this hematite, the red colouring in the rock is a very interesting lead for us. Now, we have been working on an IOCG model for this. So we sent off the cores and the data, and so not the cores, sorry, we sent off the data and the photos of the cores to an expert, a leading professor of economic geology to review for us. He's also an IOCG expert. We're hoping to have an update from him, which we'll put into the market in the near future. But right now we're pursuing, more relating to these rocks, and we're hopeful that this actually might yield some results.
Okay, excellent. Well, thank you for bringing us up to speed on the latest goings on there. Just going back to the KCB briefly, I know the CSAMP is a big part of validation of your exploration there. So do you want to just tell us what and how that's been helping you?
Yeah, so what you can see here is one of the lines that we ran over 082 of the CSAMP surveys. Now, we were looking for three main tests, or three main factors that we were seeking to test in the latest drilling. So the first one was to identify overall sort of the rock structure. And as we can clearly see here, this very pronounced dipping that occurs within our ground. That's a syncline. That's what's called a syncline. We were looking for an anticline, which is a dome, and our original interpretation of the AEM, this was, from old Kavango, but, we've got to move on from that. But we'd incorrectly identified what we thought was an anticline, which is a big part of the rationale for exploring in this area. What the CSAMT showed us, however, is it's a syncline. So that's a lot less prospective, because obviously with the dipping ground, what we're looking for is this key formational contact between the Dakar formation and the Nguako Pan. That is one of the main controlling influences on mineralization in the region. And so you're looking for that contact point. But obviously in an area where you have this syncline, this sort of dipping, folding structure, the Nguako Pan Dakar contact can be pushed much deeper, pushed out of economic range. And unfortunately, that's obviously what we've seen in our recent drilling. However, what we're very confident about and very pleased about is that the CSAMT actually showed us this. So we have confirmed that even though it wasn't the result we were hoping for, it did actually confirm we can identify that type of key controlling structure. Now, the second controlling structure that we're looking for are these brecciated zones. So basically broken up areas within the target area that you're looking for mineralization, because those broken up zones, those provided the pathways for superheated fluids to pass through that contain the minerals, basically the copper and the silver, that would have hit the redox boundaries and formed the deposits. So the brecciation zones are very important, because again, you're looking for fluid pathways. And one thing that we confirmed in this drill is that we did correctly identify a brecciation zone. So that was out to the left of this image. So this area here, we successfully drilled that with hole 05, and we encountered the brecciated zone exactly where we anticipated. From memory, I think it was at about 350 meters. Now, that was a very significant test, because that brecciated zone wasn't known about previously. There was no other indication that that would be there, but we identified it from 350 meters above surface, so from 350 meters, without any physical evidence of that. So this was purely from the CSAMT survey. So that tells us that this system is certainly working in terms of identifying the brecciated zones. Now, the final test is we were looking for the formational contact between the Dakar and the Nguako Pan. That is more difficult, because what CSAMT shows you is it shows you individual layers of rock. What it doesn't tell you is what those individual units actually are. You go through different resistive zones, and until you've actually drilled them, you won't know what the actual rock units themselves are. So this is where the interpretation comes in. In this instance, unfortunately, what we had hoped would be Dakar and Nguako Pan was actually a sandstone unit. But the good news about that was that we did actually hit a sandstone unit. So we did hit a change in lithology as the drill bit went deeper again, which is what the CSAMT indicated. Now, although that's obviously meant that the prospects for 082 are now obviously much diminished, it's very encouraging for us with the work that we're doing over in the Karakubis licenses. We have been running more CSAMT over there, and we will be publishing the results in the coming weeks. Jeremy's currently working on the inversions and the interpretation for those. But what we've seen so far ties up with the regional modelling that both Kaz and Dave have provided us, and the work that we know from the public domain information that ENRG are doing immediately to our east. So all of this coming together, it's painting a very encouraging picture for us, and we believe that we've got this really wonderful tool that is going to help us a great deal in terms of unlocking our license's potential.
Okay, excellent. Well, thank you for bringing us up to date across the three project areas there. Now let's just go and look at some of the more strategic elements from the business and that update. So first of all, you mentioned there about getting active on the ground, but how do Kavango plan to secure the direct project funding that you've mentioned to advance the exploration programs for the KSZ, KCB and Ditau? Any specific strategies or potential partners that you have in mind at the moment?
No, it's very simple. We're looking for direct project financing for our projects in Botswana. So we currently have one wholly owned subsidiary, Kanye Resources, that has both our Ditau and our KCB licenses. We're currently considering splitting those. So we'll make the KCB a standalone vehicle and Ditau a standalone vehicle. And we're also considering putting the KSZ into a standalone vehicle itself. So we're looking for direct project finance into those, where we will sell a stake into those businesses, basically on an earn-in basis. We've obviously been working with Tamasys on the KSZ JV. At the moment, I think what we're looking at is a bit too early stage for the majors. They're very interested in the project, certainly, but what we need is a bit more physical evidence. We need to go out and get some actual drill core with some clearer indicators of mineralisation. However, we are in talks with some other parties who are looking at all three of our projects with a view to direct project financing. We obviously raised £3.5 million in October, November last year. So the business is very well financed. We can obviously decide where we put our own exploration spend and how we will continue to drive the projects forward ourselves. But the optimal path for us will be to bring in direct project financiers into the three project areas.
Okay. Now, the RNS also talks about the plans for portfolio expansion. So what are the key factors that Kavango considers when seeking prospective metal exploration projects in Southern Africa? And what are the criteria for near-term economic discoveries?
Well, we're looking for economic success. I mean, that's the long and the short of it. Obviously, our portfolio in Botswana is extremely challenging, but one of the advantages of it being so challenging is that we as a business have really sharpened our exploration skills, particularly in our use of geophysics. So we're looking for projects that are much nearer to surface, ideally with much more geology at surface. Obviously, you have to consider jurisdictional risk. That's a very important factor in any of this. You need to make sure there's a mining code, mining law that you can rely on, that title and claims. There's a lot to do in terms of legal due diligence for these projects, from the actual project ownership, current ownership, through to the overall sort of macro environment that we would be operating in. We also have to make sure that the country that we'll enter into has got sufficient labour force. We've obviously built up a fantastic team in Botswana. One of the things that sets us apart from a lot of our competitors is how much we've invested into our people in Botswana. You know, we've built a real culture of investment into our staff. We'd want to carry that into the next country that we enter into, but obviously we need to have staff and available operational people to be able to join our team. So I've been out on the ground twice now to the main country that we're looking at. I've just recently come back from an 11-day trip there. I'm already putting in place what I believe could be a cracking team. And we're currently going through the legal due diligence at the moment on the two projects that we're looking at to make sure that obviously, there's no sort of legal wrinkles we might run into. Once we've gone through those steps, we're then going to enter into option agreements. So our strategy is we're not going to be acquiring projects at the very beginning. We're going to look to earn into projects. That's to enable us to earn our risk. And it's really going to be a case of drill or drop. So we're going to be looking to test these projects as quickly as they can. If they pass muster, fantastic. Then obviously, we'll go all in on these projects and really make them work. If we find that we're not hitting the geological, the economic success that we want early on, then we'll simply move on to some other projects as well. So we've worked very hard at putting together a pipeline of opportunities for our business, both in terms of protecting us in the event that the first projects don't work out, but also to provide us with a pipeline in the event that they do work out, and we're looking to build on success. So I can't really be too specific at the moment in terms of where we're looking and what we're hoping to achieve, but this is a plan that we've been working on very hard since the middle of last year, when it really became clear to me that we did need to have a bit of a course direction change within Kavango. Just simply relying on the three projects that we have at the moment. Botswana is a fantastic jurisdiction to operate in, but the geology is extremely challenging. And as we've seen in terms of our recent share price performance and how the market has responded to the work that we've done, we're not really operating in an environment that has the kind of patience that a business like ours needs to work through the projects that we have. So we actually now need to deliver some nearer term results as well. But obviously delivering near term results, it's not just simply a case of flicking on a light switch and saying, right, we've entered this new country and we've got this new project and we're now going to be, suddenly producing. There's so many Me Too companies out there who do this sort of thing. And it's nothing better than a stock promote. We're looking for genuine projects where we can deliver genuine value, both to our shareholders, but also the local communities that we work within.
Okay, well, thank you very much, Ben Turney, CEO of Kavango Resources, for your time today.
Thanks for having me, Mark.
If you enjoyed this interview, then give us a thumbs up, a like or a retweet. Subscribe to us on YouTube or follow us on Twitter and hit that notification bell to be the first to know when we release new content. There's loads of great content on our website too, across all our programs at stopboxmedia.com. Thank you for watching.